Hey friends, thanks for stopping by. If you are watching this video, then that means you have found my GitHub page and you are browsing through some of my software. So congratulations and thank you for uh, checking it out. So this program here that you found is actually my final project for software security, CS305 at Southern New Hampshire University. This program, you can find the documentation, of course, in the documentation folder in the tree that you're in currently. But I'll give you a quick rundown. So basically what I was given was a program that was just this. And the idea was to make it more secure, but I wasn't given too much else direction beyond that. So I kind of took some creative liberties and added a whole bunch of extra things in there myself. So here's the breakdown. First of all, it is the beginnings of a REST server. It does not incorporate all of the components of REST, of course. You won't find a CRUD class or anything like that, but it does incorporate the Spring framework. So it will run as a server application in your web browser. I did add in HTTPS protocol, so it is a little bit more secure. And additionally, one of the stipulations of the project was to use a checksum value. So the idea was to take in a query string or a default string and use a checksum to basically turn it into a hash. And the hash algorithm that we wanted to choose was up to us. I chose the SHA-512 hash. So let's take a look at what that actually looks like in the server controller class here. All right, so this is the very generic version of it. So we've got our request mapping for /hash here. The query that it's looking for is, of course, the name. The default value is my name, but a user can put in whatever name they want to if they want. Additionally, I added a option to query for a specific algorithm as well, but the default is, of course, the SHA-512. So if the user chooses a different algorithm, they can input that as well into the address bar, and I'll show what that looks like in a second. Additionally, this does throw a no such algorithm exception, so in the event that the user puts in an algorithm that doesn't exist, and all algorithms, of course, that are acceptable are any that are found within the message digest within Java, it will throw a error into the web browser, but not stop the program from running, which is what we ultimately want. At the end, it will return everything as a string to the web browser, including the name that was input, the algorithm that was used, and of course the value of the hash. So let's take a look at what that looks like real quick by running this in our web browser. So we'll just go to Run as Java Application. Let Spring Boot do its thing, boot itself up, and then we'll just go right here where it's already ready to go loaded in. So https://localhost 8443/hash. And there we go. There's my name. There's our SHA-512 algorithm that we use, and here's our hash value. And as I mentioned, I did add a couple options in here. So if I wanted to change, for instance, the name, we would just send in a query as, we'll put in my brother's name. Here we go, and there we go, and it hashes his name instead. And let's say I wanted to hash his name as something else. We'll just put the and in there. And then the value it's looking for is algorithm. And I guess I should have chosen something that I can spell a little bit easier, but we'll change this to SHA-256. And there we go. So there's a hash in SHA-256. And of course, as I mentioned, if you pick something that doesn't exist, like SHA-255, it will instead throw an error for you, but the application will continue to run. A couple other things that I added in here too. I decided that I wanted a little bit more to do, I guess, in here. So I added a couple other objects to be created. So I added a greeting object, which is just essentially a simple greeting and a greeting endpoint that takes in, again, a name, and again, it will hash that name, but this time it returns it as in JSON format. So if I go back here and, remove all of this and say greeting, again, my name is going to be the default. There we go. So you see the same thing as before, but this time around it gives us an ID that increments every time you change it up. So if I change this here for, again, going with my brother's name, he gets an ID of 2, and of course a new hash value, and it tells you what the algorithm is as well. And then likewise, the last thing I wanted to do, and I got this idea from an earlier project in the class, was the document data. So here We've got a document object that also can be passed in, or I should say queried from the web browser. And the doc controller here does essentially the same thing as the greeting controller as before. It takes in, this time the name is allegedly going to be the business name, and it will again follow the same procedures as all the other versions before, the other controllers. It will hash all of that information, but instead of hashing the name, it hashes the entire document object, and then returns, of course, an ID and the algorithm that it uses, which in this case is the default SHA-512. There's no options to change it, and then the checksum value. So this one is found at the endpoint doc, DOC. So we can take a look at that real quick, and all it does is create the document object for us. So if I just type in doc, there we go. So we've got a document ID of 1. The business name is, of course, business. I can change that if I want to. So if I query in something like Amazon, there we go. There's Amazon's hash value right there. And what this is doing is it's actually creating a document object right here, this doc data object, which contains the ID, of course, the business name, and those are the two main things right there. And then what it does is actually takes the entire document object and hashes it. And I'm going to show how that works in a different video. But there is basically the entire program. And if you want a little bit more information, feel free to read up on this. It gives you some info about the document hashing specifically down here at the bottom, because all of these controllers all use the exact same checksum method right here that's found in the checksum class. And I did that for encapsulation, of course. We wanted to make sure that all controllers were using the same checksum algorithm so that there wasn't any repeat of code or anything like that. So that can be found here in the checksum class. So anyways, hope you like this. Hope you find this useful and helpful, and feel free to use any of these parts in your own program, or maybe you just learned something new today. Either way, I'm glad you stopped by. So with that, take care, and I'll see you in the next video.